Hello, everybody. I'm Regina, and we'd like to say good evening. Welcome to this session. For those of us who are Chinese and also celebrate the Mooncake Festival, happy Moon Festival to everyone that's present. So again, for today, we have Andy Johnston, who's the general manager of the Sentosa Golf Club. He has been in. He is no stranger to those who are familiar with golf and also global golfing. An architect by training, he also doubles his degree in turf grass, which is agronomy. He's designed more than 200 golf courses around the world with Arnold Palmer, and we are so delighted that he's spared some time from his very busy schedule to just share with us his wisdom about leadership and also coping during the COVID times. In a few minutes' time, we're going to have Andy Johnston, the general manager of Sentosa Golf Club, come by and share his wisdom on how he had led the Sentosa Golf Club to world acclaim. It's now one of the top golf courses in the world, especially the Serapong Golf Course. And also about that, Andy's a great guy who believes in building teams, who never calls his staff, but calls them a family. You'll get to find out a little bit more about his perspective about leading a diverse group of people. Okay, so I think based on the time right now is 8:07. I don't want to keep anyone else waiting. So I would like to invite Andy Johnston to join us. Hi, Andy.
Hello, how's everybody? Welcome. Thanks for coming tonight.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's September 21st, and I think for those of us who know the song, it's by Earth, Wind and Fire, September, and that's the song, but I forgot that it was the Mooncake Festival. So I had many people write to me and say, hey, Reg, of all the time to have to arrange this session, why do you do it on the Mooncake Festival evening? And I said, I didn't know because I checked the calendar and there was no way I would have known it was the Mooncake Festival. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, people, for really putting aside the lanterns and having a quick dinner and coming by here. So Andy, we've got a lot of people. If you look at the chat site, you might want to say hello to folks. Some of them say hello to you, and that would be lovely if you just kind of like wave and say a hello back to everybody or write in the chat.
Well, I'm delighted to have the opportunity to share tonight with everybody, and I do see the hellos, the welcomes from Gilbert, Nicole, and a couple of the others, and I'm also really delighted that it's kind of a small, intimate group that allows us to kind of explore things that are hard to do in a huge kind of environment. So thanks for putting this together, Ed.
No worries. So for those of you who are familiar with Sentosa Golf Course, it is one of the most beautiful golf courses in the world. It is rated as one of the top 100 golf courses, and I think it's ranked number 59, if I'm not wrong. So what we decided was, this is our first community of practice, and what it means is we come together as a community, and rightfully so, we want to have best practices here. So we're starting this out with Andy, who's agreed to share his wisdom, having spent more than a decade in Singapore. I think he's highly Singaporean in the way he works, but you'll listen to a bit more about his work ethics. So before we start and I pass the time to Andy, I'd like to again say thank you very much for everyone who made time to attend. I understand that everyone's busy, everyone's tired, but you all turn up. So great. So over to you, Andy. I'm going to just let you take over this session talking about reality and in these COVID times.
Okay,
over
great.
To you, Andy.
Thank you. And thanks everybody again for coming. I'm going to go ahead and start so bear with me a second, a PowerPoint that I've put together. These are partially some slides that we had in a town hall about a week ago. So some of these are things that we actually share with our colleagues and our team. Some of these are unique for tonight, and some of them might be somewhat similar, but the way that we're going to talk about them are slightly different. But and Reg is my nickname for Regina, but my background from what Reg was talking about. I have a degree from Michigan State University in turfgrass science. I have a degree in architecture from a small school in Phoenix, Arizona. I've been in the golf business for 40 years. I'm a Class A golf course superintendent. I've designed over 200 golf courses. I've performed as a construction project manager. I built over 90 Arnold Palmer golf courses in the early part of my career when I worked for Arnold, and I've been a operations manager, so as the GM of Sentosa Golf Club. And so what is unique about that is it's rare to find somebody in a business that has excelled in different fields within the business, but those are all very, very different fields that are pretty hard to find somebody that's excelled in. And I often say it probably makes me one of the most well-rounded people in the golf business today. Some of the things we're going to talk about tonight, and hopefully this takes me about 20 minutes, people, culture, a little bit about the product that we have and how we've invested in it, breaking barriers, ownership, what it's like working for ownership and dual transformation. And then three things that I want to leave everybody with: perseverance, motivation, and storytelling. So kind of getting into it, developing a culture. I mean, this is the most difficult thing in every business. And I think we've developed what I call a pretty healthy culture at Sentosa Golf Club, but it's work, it's constant work, and it never stops. But it's always been a successful business, but it's not always been a successful culture. I mean, there was a time where we were living underneath the same roof, but everybody was protecting their own area, not working together as a team. And those barriers have broken down, but largely because of these kinds of things, the values that we've delivered. And so, our culture defines the quality of our club, and it frames the relationships we have with our colleagues, our stakeholders, our members, our guests. And it's not an act, it's a habit, it's a way of life. And I truly believe that, but these are the values that we break down and we live together. So building a bonding family, it takes some unique things. And part of that's looking for nuggets. So what are nuggets? Everybody's telling a story, right? Every person you look at has something on them or is doing something. And we call those nuggets. Those nuggets allow us to approach you, to learn a little bit about your story, to develop how we can engage with you. I mean, what we want to do is solve problems. Motivating. I have these sayings around the club, and the team hears these a lot. So if you're not a leader on the bench, don't call yourself a leader on the field. You're a leader everywhere and nowhere. And I'm sure everybody can kind of relate to that. I mean, you can think about times where somebody gave one of your colleagues an assignment that you thought should have been yours, and then you didn't want to help them. You said, well, fine, if the boss is going to give that to him, then let's see if he can do it. And actually, that's not what teamwork is about. Teamwork is inspiring to help that person to be a leader and say, how despite your inner feelings, how can we make the business better? How can we take ownership? And so ownership and building a sense of ownership comes in so many different ways. I kind of have a little saying here: every penny is your own money. And us as leaders, if we truly believe that every penny is our own, like it's in our own bank account. I mean, do you turn the lights off when you leave your office? Do you turn the AC off when you leave the room? You do that in your own house. So why wouldn't you do that at your business? And if you can take those values and drive them downhill, and drive's probably not the right word, but build them downhill into everybody that works for you, and everybody can take ownership and have that sense of ownership, then your business runs very different. And I've had the luxury of working through my career for families of big businesses and small businesses, and truly every penny mattered. And so that was a value that never left me. Building intuitive skills. So the difference between a manager and a leader, and we were just kind of chatting about this before, managers do things right? They make sure that, the napkins are in the right place and the silverware goes in the right drawer, but leaders do the right things. Okay, so those are very different processes. And when you think about those, it's best to be both, right? It's best to be both a manager and a leader, but not every person can be. But as leaders, we're trying to help our managers become leaders. And so there are different processes. And leaders, it's your job to inspire people around you to push themselves and in turn the company into greatness. And to do this, you must show them by doing it yourself. And so you also have to surround yourself with great leaders. And so this is a cool image. So this is our head chef, KK, and he's with one of Singapore's most decorated chefs, Otto Wiebel. And Otto, he personally has trained KK, and he's involved in KK's development. And it's really cool to have Otto on our committee, but also part of our team as a leader. And so I call these the nine disciplines. So having sincere enthusiasm, integrity, giving people credit for their accomplishments. Think about that. I mean, how often do we tell each other what we do wrong? Quite often. We rarely tell each other what we do right. And so when you can take the thank yous and the acknowledgments of what you do right, and I can take that back into days at the club when we were working on bunkers. And this is kind of a silly little story, but we were working on how to get the texture of the sand right, how to get them smooth, what that looks like, and what that experience feels like. And the next day I came back by, and the guys had done such a great job. When I pulled up, I filled them with praise on how great the bunkers looked. And you know how much that meant to them, the smiles that came on them, because I acknowledged the great work that they did. And so when you really are trying to inspire your team to do better, you really have to think about acknowledging the successes. It's also important to make sure we discipline, and we'll get to that, but that's not always the case. I mean, we're pretty good at telling each other what we do wrong. And again, it's important to say what you do right, but leaders must motivate, right? And then fairly offer discipline. Loyalty is two-way, right? It's reciprocal. If you want people to be loyal to you, you must be loyal to them. So decisiveness, risk-taking is part of leadership, but you have to use your intuitive, calculative intelligence. Managerial competence. Not everybody that's great at their job is a great leader. You have to recognize those things. So empowerment approach and friendly, show sincerity with care. Charisma, train and develop those underneath you. And of course, emotional intelligence. And you have to have that alignment with your team, right? This didn't always work for us. I mean, I'm proud to say that it works today, that our board thinks the same way that we do, that our ownership, so our Sentosa Development Corporation, is aligned up with our vision of what we're trying to achieve every day. So is our committee, our stakeholders, our staff, and of course our members. But it always didn't used to be that way. I can remember days when the membership wanted something different. The staff were afraid to look at the members. And the staff now are very proud of what they've accomplished, and members are very proud of the staff. And so when you have that alignment, man, you can accomplish a lot of things and inspiring. Okay, so we have these really kind of quirky things all around the workplace, but this is a saying we have at the agronomy building on the pump station that we put up right after we broke into the world's top 100. And it's a quote from Muhammad Ali. Champions can come and go, but to be legendary, you must have heart. More heart than the next man, more heart than anybody in the world. And you think about how inspiring some of these things are. And if you're a good storyteller, how you can take these down into building a really good culture. So your values, our mission to be tournament ready 365, our vision to deliver Asia's best golf experience, and our objective. This is not a practice round the tournament is today. It is impossible to come to our course and not know what our strategy is. I mean, this is our strategy to be tournament ready 365 days out of the year, partly because that objective is on the wall in the members' car park. When they arrive, they see that. It's on the wall where every employee thumbs in every morning. It's on the wall as you pass out of golf maintenance in the mornings. It's impossible not to know what our strategy is, and that's to be in tournament condition 365 days out of the year. And so our brand position statement, we kind of developed this. So if you're in the elevator and somebody said, "Oh, Sentosa Golf Club, what is that?" This is how we would describe ourselves, as one of the world's great golf clubs, recognized for its championships and some of golf's major moments, remembered for its pristine course conditioning and best-in-class service. So the interconnected service values, right? So the golfing department, security, agronomy, housekeeping, food, everybody's got to be interconnected and work together. And as I said in the beginning, when we were talking about culture, that didn't used to be the case. We were very territorial of our spaces, and we didn't really want to help each other. We were a successful business, but not like we are today. Today we're world class because we're one family, and anybody will do anything for anybody. And that comes back to walking the walk, leading by example. Don't let backstage come front stage, investing in quality time. But the most important thing of all, no toxic talk. We will not tolerate toxic talk. And so it is not okay to talk about somebody else and develop that, because toxic talk destroys healthy businesses. Toxic talk destroys having great culture. And if you have toxic talk, there's no way you can be world class. And so it's one of the rare things that we just won't tolerate. But a quite interesting quote from President Eisenhower: "A people that values its privileges over its principles loses both." And you think about that. I mean, that's pretty important. So really for us, it's all about the customer. The customer is where we have to focus, right? Because it's all about the experience that you give them. The only playbook that any of us has really is the values of our company. So if you have great values and you can use your own internal compass to drive you, you can have a great culture. We had Disney with us one year, and Disney left us with these 10 lessons, and I thought they were pretty important to share tonight. So never let backstage come on stage, right? So kind of a great saying. What time is my 8 o'clock tee time is not a stupid question. I can't, you think about that, it really isn't, because there are so many factors that can happen. You could be late coming. There could be a rain delay. There could have been a change in the schedule, and somebody might walk up to you. There is never a stupid question. And when you're in the hospitality business or in any kind of service business, there's no reason to think that anything is stupid. Little woes or little things add up. Have fun with the job, no matter how miserable you feel. I mean, that's critical. You have to stand there and smile. That's one of the key principles at Disney. It doesn't matter if you can't smile, you can't work there. And so delivering that kind of hospitality. Don't be a customer robot. Pay attention to detail. Everything speaks. Never say, "That's not my job." Don't even think it. One of the most important things to teamwork. That is absolutely can't be in your vocabulary. Everyone has a customer. Figure out what ticks your customer off and fix it. Do something about it. Take responsibility for your own career. And then again, our saying at the bottom, no toxic talk. So Walt Disney had this saying: you can design and create and build the most wonderful place in the world, but it takes people to make the dream a reality. And that couldn't be more real. So these are our 7 5-star touch points. And it's kind of interesting. I read this in a magazine about a small hotel in the Carolinas, and these were the things that they adopted to make them one of Forbes magazine's top 100 resorts. And these are the 7 things they did. Get the customer's name right. Beat the greet. So be the first one to say hello. And we have this thing now, right? So when you see somebody coming, when they're there within 10 meters, you make eye contact, 4 meters, you're saying hello, and you're trying to be the first one to say hello. And when we first kicked this off, we were so good at it. We had people coming up to the golfing counter saying, "What's going on? Why is everybody saying hello to us?" And it really made an impact. But anticipating people's needs, looking for nuggets, because nuggets tell a story, commit to constant training, reinforce brand values, as we were talking about earlier. Do these at your toolbox meetings in the mornings. Do these at your gatherings. and of course, earn your 5 stars every day. Wake up every day and say, how am I going to earn my 5 stars every day? We talk about this a lot at the club. Nobody cares about the awards we won yesterday, and we've won a lot. You're measured by what you do today, by the experience you deliver today. So don't prove and improve. And that's a pretty key saying too. So sense of urgency. And sorry if I'm talking fast, but I've kind of got a lot to cover and I want to get through it quickly in my 20 minutes. So if you have questions, throw them into the question panel and we'll get to them. But sense of urgency, so important, because tomorrow, one of the things that I cannot stand when people say, I'll do it tomorrow. Why? Because tomorrow never gets here. It's always tomorrow. If you want to be world-class, sense of urgency, you see it, you do it now, you make a difference. People recognize that, people see it, and it matters. And it makes everybody feel better. Dual transformation. This is one of the things that we see currently going on in life as we look at it today. And I think one of the best examples of dual transformation that I can give you is this, the Nokia phone. Everybody had one of these. It was the most popular phone perhaps on the planet. I had one. I mean, some of you might be too young here to have one, but I had one. And then what happened? The iPhone came out. This wasn't that long ago. This is a little over 10 years ago, right? The iPhone came out. And look at the graph, right? Nokia refused to change. The iPhone broke into the market in 2007. By 2012, they had destroyed what Nokia, everybody had a Nokia phone. Shortly after that, you see the CEO of Nokia crying at a press conference when they got bought by Microsoft. So what happened? Nokia refused to change, right? So everything's about being nimble on your feet. And we're right now probably in one of the biggest dual transformations of our lives. It's called COVID. We had the pandemic, we have lockdown, we have restrictions. We're trying to go into the endemic. And if you're not flexible in your day-to-day thinking and how you approach business and your team, as well as leadership, you're going to get left behind. If you change nothing, nothing changes. So you think about that. That's a really important saying. And as leaders, when you have this dual transformation that's going on, which is always going on, you have to be nimble on your feet. You have to think different. I mean, either the day runs you or you run the day. So creative thinking. And this is something that I hope I can leave with everybody. Creative thinking is so powerful. It's something that goes all the way down to every employee that works for you. Everybody can have a great idea. Everybody can think differently. Sometimes we as leaders get in tunnel vision. Sometimes it's the most basic employee that works for us that has the greatest idea that then we can bring to the surface and really make productivity the best. Creative thinking is something that everybody must embrace, especially in today's environment. And so it drives the secret question. What's our secret question? Is it product? Is it our brand? Is it what we're selling? What do you guys think our secret question is? What are we selling? Well, it used to be tee times. It used to be come out to the golf course, whatever time you can. It used to be tee times. Now we have one of the world's top 100 golf courses. We've put a lot of effort into putting it into this kind of condition. It never used to look like this. It was just as average as every other golf course in the community and within the region. So what do you guys really think we're selling? We're selling an experience. It's an event that occurs and leaves an impression, right? That's why you come to the club. Because when you come to Sentosa Golf Club, we're not just selling golf, we're not selling a tee time. What we're selling is that whole, from the time you leave your house till you get to the club. What happened? How were you greeted? What was it like when you got down to your golf cart? How did the golf course look in its appearance? How did it feel when you came back? And when you leave our club, we want you to go, wow, that was worth it. But we still have to push the boundaries, right? So how did we get that experience the way it is now? By pushing those boundaries. When we first started changing the way we did agronomics, the fastest green speeds, and for those of you who don't really know and follow what green speeds are, the fastest green speeds in Singapore were during one of our major tournaments, the Singapore Open, and that was 10-2. So that's how fast the green rolled, 10.2. It was usually a 7.5 to an 8 on a daily basis. 10.2 was considered wow. 10.2 is the average fastest green speed on the European Tour throughout their tournaments all year long. Our average green speed now today is 10.5. It's been 10.5 for the past decade. And when we first set that KPI for ourselves, people said, they're crazy. They can't do it. It'll never happen. It's delivered the kind of experience that just changed everything. But we've taken it further. Our tees are just as fast as our greens. And that actually blows everybody's mind when they come out to visit us. Conditioning, it's part of the experience that we provide, and it exceeds expectations. We explore things that have never been done before. We're pioneers. We're the first ones to do it in not only in the world, but in Asia. And it drives conditioning that people have never seen before. And we refuse to sit still. So even though we're on one of the world's best golf courses, we still improved it. Last year, we closed it for almost an entire year, and we renovated it, and we made it even better. And we realigned things, and we came up with really creative thinking outside the box, things like this. So this is the 6th hole. And you can see where the concrete cart path kind of comes out of the bunker. Well, rather than have concrete all the way down the fairway, we designed this really creative kind of intuitive looking a bunker that you can drive your cart path through. It's in play, but it doesn't bring the concrete into play. And it's really changed the kind of product that we offer. We have these great vistas of downtown Singapore from everywhere you go. And it's in an environment that you just can't believe when you come out and see us. So what do you think the tools are that we need to sell a great experience? Well, it's not the kind of fertilizers we buy, and it's not the fertilizer spreaders. And here's the team putting some products out on our green. And if you can see what they're doing, we're putting 4 products down at the same time. Nobody does that. Nobody does that anywhere in the world, but we're doing it successfully because it's our team. The most valuable tool you have is your men and women that work for you. And the men and women of Sentosa is the most valuable tool that we have. We can buy the best equipment, we can buy the best software, but it's no good if your team isn't prepared to run it. But in the end, don't lose focus of the most important thing, and that's the experience, because that's what you're selling. So the experience, consistently delivering exceptional service, great food prepared with passion, service that exceeds expectations, looking for nuggets and solving problems. Don't treat symptoms, solve problems. Delivering elevated standards, this is the experience that everybody's looking for. So if you want to earn the confidence of your members and guests, you really have to develop that culture to get to the experience. So what does the road ahead look like? I mean, that's up to you, and that's up to all of us. So here's the 3 things that I want to leave with everybody. Perseverance. So my first boss, Arnold, said to me, one of the lessons he gave me in my early days was, son, if you want to be any good at this, learn the B's. And I said, the B's? What are the B's? And he said, be the first one here, be the last one to leave, have a sense of ownership. So pretty interesting lesson. Thomas Edison. Our greatest weakness lies in giving up. So back to perseverance, right? The most certain way to success is always to try one more time. Arnold, he was a great motivator. He had some really good rules of thumb. And so the son of a golf course superintendent, he came from humble belongings, kind of like me. He got access to the golf course because his dad was the guy who mowed the grass. And he had such a great talent, but he had great motivational leadership skills that defined the kind of people that helped him develop probably one of the world's most successful businesses. So motivational leaders make decisions, set clear goals, and provide their teams with the empowerment and tools to achieve success. Motivational leaders evoke and see the best in their employees, inspire them to work towards a common goal. Some of the silly sayings we have around the club, and this one's inside our cart barn: the most rewarding things you do in life often look like the ones that can't be done. Arnold Palmer. Motivating your team is so important. I have this little clip, and I hope everybody can see it, that talks a little bit about storytelling. So bear with me while we watch this.
You know, my very first published photographs were on the pages of the National Geographic. I still find that hard to believe. I mean, it was crazy, but that's what happened. I was 26 years old, and Bob Gilka, the head of photography at the Geographic, called me back to their headquarters in Washington, D.C. to give me my marching orders. And I remember standing in the lobby of what they call Explorers Hall, and I was looking at giant globes and dog sleds and submersibles and flags planted on Everest, and surrounded by the most beautiful photographs I'd ever seen in my life. How was I going to prove that I was worthy of working here? And then I was taken upstairs and into Bob's office. Bob was a blunt man, just straight and to the point, and honestly, a little scary. Well, that morning, I was completely unprepared for what he said to me. He stopped me cold. He changed the way I did everything from that day forward. He looked at me from over his desk and he said, "You know, DeWitt, the people who photograph for this magazine are the best in the world. You don't have to prove yourself." I don't have to prove myself. I mean, honestly, that's all I've been thinking about since I got the assignment. You don't have to prove yourself, he continued. But by God, every day you had better improve yourself. The words went in. Don't prove yourself, improve yourself. Bob was still talking. He said, "You know, I want you to spend your time every day trying to be better than you were yesterday. If you learn something that'll help the others, well, then share it. That way we'll all get better faster. Don't prove yourself, improve yourself. Otherwise, you're fired." Big first lesson, right out of the blocks. I don't know how many times I've thought about it, how many times I've acted on it since that day at Bob's office. Don't prove yourself, improve yourself. And you know, living that lesson, I've come to see that life really is a lot more about cooperation than it is about competition. It wasn't proving myself or taking others down that allowed me to succeed. It was simply consciously, continuously improving myself, refining my skills, honing my wisdom, focusing my vision. Ultimately, the only person I was trying to surpass was me. Don't prove, improve.
Yeah, so great little video about storytelling. And storytelling is such an important part of leadership, because if you want to be a great leader and you want to have success, you really have to be a great storyteller. You have to connect the dots. You have to have the great discipline. You have to have that enthusiasm, and you have to have that etiquette values of, you know, coming and going and what time and ownership. But storytelling is an important part of connecting with your people. And this is just a little saying from Oprah that I put up here. But you know, the bottom part of this is really so what's true. You know, Oprah is true. Sorry. What's a true media mogul, Oprah Winfrey, is true for any leader. We are all in the storytelling business. After all, being granted the authority of a leadership position is not enough. If you tell great stories, then you also have social power and a leader and people will want to align with your vision. Leaders must harness the power of storytelling. And sorry if I kind of fumbled that a little bit, but I just can't emphasize enough about how important it is to be a great storyteller. And so the great video there that you watched, I mean, it tells some really good stories about, you know, earning your 5 stars every day, prove yourself, but it's also about great stories. And when I come to this photo, we were renovating the Serapong course when the lockdown happened. We had a contractor that had a really aggressive schedule. He had 150 people that were assigned to our project. He had a small window to perform the work, 6 months to do the work. The lockdown comes. He got quarantined, all 150 people. We ended up self-performing the work ourselves. We ended up doing the majority, 75% of it. And we did it with our own team because our team felt so empowered with such ownership. You see on the right, working to the left, our director of corporate services, Sylvester, out there every day laboring. In the center, wearing white coveralls, that's Nicole, our director of golf. To her left is our executive chef, KK, then my EA, then our food and beverage manager, then 2 of our other associates from sales and the golf. Our team came out and actually rolled up their sleeves and took ownership of what we needed to do to get the work done. Where would you find that unless you develop the right kind of culture? And so, you know, I close with this. I say it's a privilege of a lifetime to work at Sentosa Golf Club, shoulder to shoulder with my Sentosa family. And I couldn't be more happy to have shared some of that with everybody. So that's kind of the end.
Great, thank you very much. Pete, can you help start my video because I can't as the host has stopped it. Thank you. Hey everybody, so this is a webinar. If we were all in a room as we had planned a fireside chat, we will all have kind of like, you know, given him a round of applause. So what Andy can only do right now is just check in on the chat and then to see how everyone's thinking about what he said. So Andy, if you look at it, what we're seeing is we're seeing everyone saying thank you. We see a round of applause. We went woohoo, and then look at, and we have everyone. I think people want to work for you from what I read right now. Have you got any job applications, right? I think they'll do anything. Yeah.
Well, I see a few questions here. And so.
Yeah. So this is so nice, Andy. Yeah, and we've got questions, so we're going to let everyone take some time. You've kind of power packed this very short session. We've got 4 open questions coming in from Christine, Michelle, we've got Gilbert, we've got Christine coming up with more questions, and I think the rest you probably need some time. So as I'm getting you to think a little bit more, we would like to see you type your questions in, and we'll give you a chance to speak later in a while. But I just wanted to just ask this question to you, Andy. So you talked about the bees, right? And you had a great time. You had a wonderful career with Arnold Palmer. It is unbelievable, and he's humble. And you've come out so humble, having had designed 200 golf courses around the world when you were with him. Hey, can you tell me a little bit about this concept to be, and you've been there, it's easier, but when you have to inspire your people to do that, what do you do to keep them sustaining it? Because starting is always the easy part, but then keeping them going at it day after day after day with your 365 concept, how do you maintain that?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because it does take me back earlier to my days with Arnold too, and you know, I'm going to answer that in 2 ways. In my early days with Arnold, there were so many guys that worked for him that thought, oh, I worked for Arnold, and so that makes me powerful. That makes me special. They parked at the front door, and I would scratch my head and think, how could that be? How could he be more important than the customer? That because he works for Arnold and he's the general manager of this facility, that he's entitled to a more privileged position. And eventually those were some of the things that caused a big disruption within the company. But you look at Arnold was very humble. Arnold parked at the back of the parking lot. He didn't park at the front. He walked to the front and like everybody else would. And when I look at the values that he really gave the majority of us, these are the kinds of things that I try to drive today. I think about myself like everybody who works with us. If I'm willing to roll up my sleeves and do the work, I expect everybody else to do it. But if I'm above doing the work, how could I expect anybody to do it? I mean, so those are simply the values that you have to have. There's nothing too big, nothing too small. We're all in this together, and we all have to participate in it. And so in order to build that kind of culture, you really have to have that kind of dedication to the kind of family that you're going to develop.
Right. So it looks like it's about modeling the way. You have to walk the walk and talk the talk.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing from you. Right?
Absolutely. And be prepared to do it, no matter how dirty of a job it is.
Right. So that's also a piece that really comes jarring at me, because we all are prepared to do the job, but when it gets really downright dirty and uncomfortable, it's a different talk we're talking about. You know, people will say yes, but up to that. But this is interesting. I'm going to now put you the indirect context. So Peter, could you help me turn the mic on for specific individuals who've actually written? You've got questions here, and they're very big questions. So let's begin. I've got actually 2 questions coming in from Christine. So Christine, could you put your questions together? And Peter, if you could kindly help me, if you could turn the mic on. Over to you, Christine, to just ask your question directly to Andy right now.
Hi, Andy. Thanks, Reg.
Hi, Christine.
Inspiring talk, and there are so many questions in my head, where one of them is what I wanted to ask was, what's your opinion of culture? Because you mentioned about culture, and you also mentioned that it wasn't an easy journey. The real challenges that one needs to face up, apart from diversity and inclusion, to make this culture of togetherness, one family work. What are some of that reality challenges that you face to overcome, and the steps to overcome that?
Okay, so, thank you very much, Christine. Yeah. Over to you.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to speak in front of you, Reg. Okay, so you know, I'm going to put this into some reality of some experiences that we had that I think everybody could relate to, and I'm gonna kind of describe it like this. You want a cohesive team that will help each other, and there was a day where we had a big event at the club, and it required us to have what we call the GT. And remind me, Reg, to come back to the GT later. But the GT is our golfer's terrace, so it's our outdoor open space where everybody kind of eats and dines, and it's at 2 levels. And the bottom level this evening, we were going to have a standing cocktail party. And it was no big deal, right? So no big deal. The F&B team would be able to remove those tables, put them in another space, and have some standing tables. We had plenty of time to do this. All of a sudden, something to develop that none of us had planned for. We had a weather delay. And so everybody on the golf course rushed back to the clubhouse at the same time. Our F&B team was so occupied with dealing with the service, they weren't available to remove those tables and set the space up. And they said in a chat group that we developed, we need some help moving the tables. Now, in the past, we wouldn't have even have had a chat group. In the past, if somebody put something in the chat group, all the other divisions would have looked at it and said, tough luck, whatever, it's their problem, they're F&B. In the past, it would have been a bit of a failure for all of us as leaders and employees of the club, and our guests would have left a bit unhappy because we never would have been able to prepare the space. They put this message into the text. And to my surprise, before I could even get there, within 5 minutes before I could even get there, the entire agronomy team showed up and had already removed everything so they could prepare it for the guests of this corporate event. And they were from BMW, if I remember right. Seamlessly, everything worked out. And like teamwork, which never would have been possible before, everything developed. And so how did that happen? That happened simply by not tolerating the kinds of things that happened before, and by empowering the leadership, the HODs, the small group. So there's five, maybe 6 key HODs on our team. By empowering them and giving them that power to do those things, where in the past we might have walked across a space and one of them might have said, "Don't do that. That's not your space. Don't touch it." And so by empowering them to work together and then displaying that in the right kind of moments in our ops meetings and praising them, it gave the other HODs that door to say, "Hey, I want to be part of this." And eventually we broke down all the barriers to the point where now it doesn't even matter. We wouldn't even think that way. But in those days, everybody thought very singular. And this happens a lot in 90%, maybe even more businesses around the world, where your divisions don't look at supporting each other. Finance is finance, HR is HR, is IT is IT. But we won't tolerate that. And so I think, to answer your question, those are some of the cultural things that you have to drive in order to develop that kind of teamwork relationship.
Great, thank you very much. So I hear the word tolerant come out, or not tolerating, before you talked about empowering, and that's quite good, because we always talk about empowering, equipping, but you put a caveat before that: you do not tolerate. So I've got a question here from Renita. Ren, do you want to ask the question directly, because this could link to the question that you've actually typed into the text? So over to you, Ren. Did you want to ask a question that's actually right now in the question and answer site? Can I just check in if Renita is there?
Reg, I think our mic's not working.
Okay, all right. So it's okay, we'll come to that. But I think her question was about how does then one operate perhaps in a toxic environment, probably because of a legacy culture that would have probably come with rigidity and a lack of desire of colleagues to improve. So this is a related question about not tolerating, but how do you work through legacy scenarios? I'm sure you were there before, because there always is a legacy that you have to deal with.
Yeah, that's true. And I'm not going to be so naive to say that it still doesn't exist today. But what I do expect is to develop a culture that it's not just me. It's now the HOD team. It's now the managers under the HOD team that try to develop a lifestyle that we turn those things around. In the beginning, it really was just myself. And you're right. When you're dealing with a historic legacy, it's not easy, and it didn't go away overnight. It took years before we finally made such an impact that it was noticeable. But you just have to persevere through it, and you have to have those qualities that when you recognize it, you find a way to address it, because the only way to solve a problem is to confront it. And problems don't go away by telling somebody else, by talking about, "Oh, did you see what she was wearing?" That's not okay. You can't, you can't have that kind of coming to work has to be a safe place. And it has to be so safe that you make it so comfortable that we can tell each other what we want or what's on our mind and not have to worry about what we think about. We can disagree, and we disagree a lot. Trust me, it's not such a perfect life that we can't. We disagree a lot, but it's healthy disagreement. And then we come up with values that we think we can live with day to day. But toxic just can't exist. When it's toxic, it tears apart your company. It tears apart your division. It tears apart your office. And that kind of environment has to be addressed, and you have to confront it. You have to, as a leader, say, I'm not going to deal with this. You have to help. And so, we've had some really unique and during the circuit breaker, we did this. We had a humility kind of exercise where everybody had to come in every day and write a gratitude message on a board. And then we helped, use those gratitude messages for each other on, what we felt like when we came to work each day. And it was quite interesting because it identified some of us that needed some extra attention. And so gratitude is something that also works back to what we were speaking about earlier. And if you're going to have a healthy environment, you just have to start somewhere, and you've got to take baby steps until you can take big steps. But you have to address it. You have to take the high road, and you have to say, that wasn't okay. You know how you made that person feel, or that wasn't okay because that really goes against what we're trying to achieve. And if you can start taking the high road, you'll start seeing that you'll start making progress, and you'll start building a bigger, more positive group around you that then will grow from there. And that group will grow other people, and eventually you'll get there.
Nice. So it looks like that even doing something, an activity where everybody gives, they're not just grateful, but it's beyond that. It's about being grateful for every single day. And how long has that campaign gone on for?
Well, we did the gratitude campaign. It was only supposed to be a couple months. Some people did it longer. Some people are still doing it. And so it's a little whiteboard where you write down something that, how good do you feel about working here? What do you feel about your colleagues? And it was quite interesting, but it did really, it really helped us in some ways that I never thought it could.
This is quite good. It shows that one doesn't need to come up with fancy dancy themes and have HR come up with it. It could just be the everyday thing that we all wished we had every single morning when we wake up. So this is an interesting line. Hey, Ted, it's good to have you with us, and thank you very much. So Andy, Teddy's from Indonesia. If I'm not wrong, he's actually from Jakarta. Pete, if you could help unmute him. Can I just confirm, Ted, that you're with us right now?
Hello.
Hi, Teddy, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you, Gina? How are you?
I know it's been a while, and it's lovely to have you with us on Indonesian time. I'll let you throw your question directly to Andy.
Thanks again. Andy, this is a simple question, actually. I would like you to share with us what is the first thing that comes to your mind any day when you wake up in the morning. Please share with us. Thanks. Thanks, Ray.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, happy to address this because, you read all kinds of things online about what's the right thing to do when you wake up, and don't read your emails, don't read your texts, prepare yourself, I probably break every one of those rules. The first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is grab my phone and I look at all the messages that came in since I fell asleep and what I need to do to address them. And I probably do everything the wrong way. If a psychologist looked at me, they'd say, "Oh my gosh, this guy's a train wreck." But the funny thing is I wake up every morning at 4 o'clock. like clockwork. I've done it for 30 years. I don't have to set my alarm. I haven't set an alarm and I don't know how long. I'm going to wake up at 4 o'clock. And the first thing I do after I wake up is I look at the messages that came in, and some of them I respond to right away. Some of them I put off till later. I then look at the emails that have come in overnight. I run a couple different businesses. I still run a design business that's based in the US, as well as perform as GM of the club, as well as hold the director of agronomy position. And so one of the reasons I wake up at 4 a.m. is because I'm the first one there every morning. I arrive at 5:30, and part of that arrival is back to some of the things that we talked about earlier. If I expect my team to be there at 5:30, 6 o'clock, I feel like I need to be standing there at 5:30, 6 o'clock. The most important part of the day is how we start the day. The most important part of any day is the messages that we give, setting the tone, what's important. And we try to drive that with the group and go out the door. But also, I also know that being an agronomist is kind of like being a farmer. And the majority of turfgrass diseases happen at sunrise every day. And when you learn those intuitive skills, when you know what you're looking for, and it takes a lifetime to learn them, trust me. But when you know what you're looking for, you can see what's happening at sunrise. And then we can make adjustments to our fertility plans, our schedules from day to day to make those little adjustments to have world-class services. So usually what I'm thinking when I wake up is really kind of what I go back to. How can I earn my 5 stars today? And how do I go in and just make the best day of it for the team? Because my tone drives the day. If I show up dragging my heels, looking the other way, not looking like it matters, the whole day works out like that. When I show up saying, you know what, this is going to work, we're going to do something great, it turns out to be a fun day for everybody. And we have 200 team members. And so you can imagine it just sort of works downhill. And it's really, I think, important to have those leadership skills. And you have to build them. They just don't come naturally. I mean, I'm actually, believe it or not, I'm a shy and more inverted person than I am outward. But these are the kinds of things that you have to build if you want to have success. And those are the things that drive me.
Nice. Thank you very much. So now that's a brilliant question. I would never have imagined you talk about waking up at 4 a.m. And you were absolutely honest that you do look at your phone. You're not the guy that goes out there and get that Zen moment and have a cup of tea and think and meditate. So thanks for being absolutely honest. Hey, Diana, I'd like to have you right now on the line, and I see a couple of questions from you. Would you like to frame your question directly to Andy? Over to you, Diana.
Thanks, Reg. Hi, Andy. Nice hearing your speech just now. Indeed, very inspiring. One of my questions actually lead on to what you have mentioned just now with regards to walking the talk and creating that culture, being an example to the rest of the people. So I'm just wondering, besides doing that, like from a top-down kind of initiative, is there any other ground-up initiative that you have done in the company in order to grow and create this culture?
That's an interesting question, because I've had a lifetime of these kinds of experiences, and again, it comes back to your the discipline and the culture of yourself, and so I'm going to take us away from Sentosa for a minute, and I'm just going to share a story of when I was 25 years old working with Arnold. They gave me the chance of a lifetime to go to Queensland, Australia, and build a new golf course called Sanctuary Cove. So it was the first and actually only Arnold Palmer golf course ever built in Australia. And I got the assignment to be the project manager. I really shouldn't have been. I was way too young to get that assignment. I still had several years ahead of me of learning some important values before I should have gone to somewhere like that. But some reason, they picked me, and I ended up there. And you know what? It was one of the most difficult years of my life. At 25 years old, running a project in Australia in those days, in 1985, 86, somewhere in that time frame, way before cell phones, right? The fax had just been invented. I remember that because we were starting to do faxes, but I wasn't really well received. I was young. There was a huge construction company called the Wilson Group that was building the project, and they looked at me like, who is this young American kid going to tell us what to do? And it was one of the hardest jobs that I ever had. 3 a.m, I used to get calls, yank, go home, yank, we're going to do this to you. You know, the way they solved problems on the site was they actually park the gear in a circle, and who could beat the heck out of who was the one that was right. It was really a tough environment. And the group that was building it, they were just a tough, roughneck kind of group that I didn't think I'd ever be able to win them over. And the only way that this ended up being successful was perseverance. I came every morning, regardless of how they treated me. I treated every situation with integrity, regardless of how they treated me. And there were some ugly moments that I'm not gonna even come close to sharing here, where they just should never have happened with language and et cetera. But perseverance won everybody over. Eventually, everybody saw the passion that I had to build it the best it could be, to do the right things, to move it where it needed to go. And in the end, we finished the project within a year. And it turned out to be the #1 ranked golf course in Australia when it was finished. And I got on an airplane and left. And when I landed in LA, the background speakers were going off, and it was saying, Andy Johnston, please go to a courtesy phone. Andy Johnston, please go to a courtesy phone. And I went to the phone, and I'll never forget this. It was December, right? So it was almost Christmas time. I went, and I couldn't wait to go home and see my family. And I'm like 26 years old now. Hadn't seen them in forever. And in those days, I mean, that was a long way to go, right? And I picked up the phone, and it was a message from my office, and it said, "We've bought the next ticket back. The superintendent resigned the day you got on the plane, and we need somebody to take back over." And I sat there and looked at the message and said, I don't want to go back. That was the hardest job I'd ever had, and I finally finished it. I'm so glad to come home. And I ended up turning around, and I went back and got my ticket, went back to Australia. And when I got off the plane that next year, was the best year of my life. I've never had so much fun. They accepted me. Everybody had so much faith in what we were doing because of the values that we brought. And so taking your question and putting it back into the space today, use your values, drive it, and give every day your best, regardless of how difficult it is. And eventually you'll win. And when you win, it really makes a difference.
Lovely. That's a nice line. Use your values to drive your everyday, and that is what makes the difference. I'm going to ask the next person who's not spoken yet. Hey, Gilbert, over to you. I know you've asked the question online, but did you want to reframe it, or did you want to ask the same question? Over to you, Gilbert.
Hi, Rich. Thanks. Hi, Andy. So the question was, how do you assess when change is needed? I mean, from your story, you had such a difficult first year and such a nice second year after that. You said yourself the best year. So really, is how do you assess when change is really needed, especially when things are working great, and you're sort of finally reaping the benefits of all the effort?
Yeah, that's a good question. And so, how do you assess when change is needed? And so, honestly, when things are working great, and let me rephrase it like this: when things are working great is usually when leaders make the biggest mistakes. They get lazy. They stop trying to improve. And when things are going great, that's when everybody gets back on their heels and they're so happy with how things are going. And they're not looking for the little things, because the little things make the difference. And so when everything's going great, that's when you've got to step back and say, and I'm not trying to reinvent everything, because sometimes some people just destroy it by reinventing everything. But you have to sit back and say, okay, things are going great, but we can do better. Every day we need to do better. How can we do better? But you have to bring your team along with you. You can't be that one that causes such disruption that nobody wants to run with you. You've got to create the kind of culture that everybody wants to go with you as you're going. And so it's a really good question. I mean, it really is, because it's the kind of thing that, as I say to our team all the time, nobody cares about the awards we won yesterday. Nobody does. They measure us by what they experienced today. And you have to look at each day like that. And so I think that kind of addresses the question that you put forward.
Over to you, Gilbert. What did you think about the response, and did you have anything else to add to that?
Thanks. Well, when can I send my resume in?
Thanks, Gilbert.
Yeah, so I thought it would be nice, Andy, because there's some technical terms that you used. You used the word agronomy, and when we first worked together, I had some 101s with you. I thought it would be nice if we explain what agronomy was and what it entailed. So I had the opportunity to work with the Sentosa Golf Club over 2 to 3 years in a couple of transformation projects. It was before the golf club closed, way before, when there was leadership change. And what was interesting was this bit where Andy shared with everybody. And I was also then everybody, because I was a consultant in the team. And what he made us consider was, when you walk around and if you see a piece of weed, in the grass, just pick it up. That's it. Just pick it up. And if everybody does that, can you imagine the improvements it would make? So did you recall that, Andy?
I honestly don't recall that, but I do recall what we do, and I can put it back together with where you're going with this. So I'll address the question in 2 ways, because a lot of people ask me, what is agronomy? And so it's just a fancy word for farmer. I mean, really, that's what it is, right? It's agriculture, but we've taken it to a new level. I mean, it used to be, you had your life savings and your desire was to build a golf course, and you built it, and then they hired the janitor to take care of it. Then they didn't understand why it didn't look like Augusta National every day. Well, the golf has changed, and we now have guys like myself that went to school and got a degree in turfgrass management, and it's become a science. And we've taken that science to a level that people would never imagine. I mean, the things that I could share with everybody about biochars and stuff that we're using on our property, that's just game changers. But we won't go to that at the moment. But back to where Reg was. We developed a program called the 15 Weeds. So everybody who works for us has to pull 15 weeds a day. 15. You can't go home until you show your 15 weeds. You have to, before you can thumb out, you got to show them. And somebody's there actually to count them. And so you think about it, 15 weeds a day, really, could that make a difference? Well, just working on the 75 people at agronomy, 15 weeds a day, if I remember right, was something like 34,000 weeds a month. And after we did this for about 3 months, it became really hard to find a weed. I mean, you kind of head was on a swivel all the time to find one. And when you saw one, sometimes you saw guys running towards the weed to get the weed, because they were trying to get their 15 weeds so they could go home when it was time to punch out. And it changed so many things about how our property looked, but it also gave us a sense of ownership, and everybody was part of that. And it was a really cool moment. But more importantly, it helped us with the environment. It reduced our herbicides by 75% just by everybody doing something that was a little bit competitive and a little bit fun.
Yeah, you somehow have the knack of kind of making very tedious tasks a little bit more challenging and involving everybody too. I really like that 15 redefine the meaning of the word weed too. Pretty cool. So I've seen Michelle Au. Michelle Au, I read your question. Did you want to ask the question directly? Can I just check in with you? Thanks for joining us, Michelle. So checking in, Michelle? If not, I'm going to continue this. Are you still there, Michelle? Did I miss you?
Yes, can you hear?
There you go. You're coming through loud and clear. Over to you, Michelle.
Hi, Andy. It's really humbling to know that someone like you in management who is willing to walk the talk and set the example when many leaders are not willing or may not be willing. So I'm just curious to know, like, how long do you take to create a better culture from the past, and what challenges do you overcome?
I don't feel like we've actually landed yet. I mean, that's a great question, because I think there's still so much work to do. And okay, I guess when you think you've gotten there, you've lost the battle. So there's always that improvement that you've got to continue to aspire to grow into. But you ask a question that I shouldn't share this, but I'm going to. I did a radio show with one of the senior people from the American Club one day years ago. And after the radio show, we were taking a cab back to our various locations together. And I said to the person, because the American Club's known about having the best hospitality in our community. I mean, they're the best in Singapore. They're so high above everybody else. And I said, how long did it take you to make the difference, to get the American Club from where it was till now? And the person said to me, it took us 7 years. And I sat back and I said, oh my goodness, I thought to myself, 7 years before they really saw that difference. And so to go back to your question, you have to start somewhere. And every day you've got to make that difference. And every day you've got to have those values. And every day you've got to kind of drive those values amongst your leaders. And you have to inspire them to want to. If they can't take ownership of it, then the people below them won't take ownership of it. But once you start, it just becomes a process that never ends. And you can't expect it to happen in a week. You can't expect it to happen in a year. But sometimes you look back. I guess you can't expect it to happen in a year, but sometimes you can look back after 6 months and say, wow, we've really made a difference. Because every day you're in that moment, and every day you just, you're living that stage as you go. But it just doesn't take the top leader to get there. It's amazing how when all of us can start doing the right thing, how it becomes infectious and contagious. And having a good attitude when you come to work, having a smile, being appreciative, doing the right thing, it bleeds out into everybody around you, and it grows. And so, I kind of feel lucky that when I came to Sentosa, I was the director of agronomy, and that's my background, that I was helping out that team. And that was the team that probably needed the most help. That was the team that was the hardest to get along with. That was the team that couldn't get along with F&B, couldn't get along with golfing, couldn't get along with, and when we started changing things, and we started helping everybody else noticed, and then everybody else helped us. And that was the day that everything changed. And so how long does it take? That's entirely up to how dedicated you are to making sure that there is change.
Thank you very much. That was a good question. And somehow the questions came in really fine and dandy, isn't it, Andy? I mean, really good questions.
Yeah.
I'm quite impressed. Everyone was really tuning in. So we've got this last question. And if there's anyone who's dying to ask the question, please raise your hands. But I thought that it's nice to finish off today with, hey, so what continues to inspire you, or who continues to inspire you every single day, right? Every single day. So the question again is, so what or who continues to inspire you, Mr. Andy Johnston, when you wake up at 4 a.m. every single morning?
Well, kind of funny. My new CEO, and I think the world of her. I mean, she's brought a whole new life to the island of Sentosa. Said to me the first day I met her, she said, "Oh my God, you've just won the world's best golf club. You've just won this. You just won that. You're at the ceiling. Where else can you go?" And I looked at her and I said, "Huh? But the runway's still so long." In my mind, you know what inspires me? I want to have the best possible golf club in our not only in our community, but in this part of the world. I want to help drive hospitality and tourism that really sets us apart from everywhere else. I want to have tournaments that are so big the whole world talks about them. I want to continue to grow our culture to the point where everybody can't wait to wake up to come to work every morning, just like me. And I think that never ends. And as long as you still have that drive, it will continue to bleed down into everybody else. But funny, I know I won't be GM of Sentosa forever. And there'll be a day where I hope I've built something so powerful that the group that I turn it over to can even make it better than what we have now. But I do hope that I die designing golf courses. I just love designing golf courses. I mean, it's so powerful to create something that, I mean, you put your footprint on the earth and it'll last for hundreds of years. And it's just so gratifying. And it's something that when I was 16 years old, I knew I wanted to be a golf course architect. And life has taken me through all these different places. And one of them was becoming the GM of Sentosa, which I never thought I would be. And I'm so happy to do it. But when this ends, I still aspire to keep designing golf courses and building some treasures for the world still to come.
It's lovely just to hear that coming from you and from someone who's so far away from home, and you've made Singapore home. This is really lovely to hear. Yeah. So people, we've come to almost the completion of this session. And I thought it would be nice if we all express our appreciation for Andy, who's given so much of his time in preparation for this session. Could we just have you type your appreciation or comments or job applications or resumes directly? And don't forget, Andy, once they're done, we've got the GT code that you'd like to share with them too. So everyone, I'm going to give you a minute to just type your comments. Thank you. And maybe a takeaway that you've got today after the session. So thank you to Andy for being with us, and everyone else. Any comments? Thank you, appreciation for Andy.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity, Reg, and just appreciate everybody that came. It was a little bit intimate, and there were some great questions. And I guess I'd like to as Reg reminded me, if anybody would like to continue the conversation, if you'd like to learn more, please feel free to come find me at Sentosa. Come through Reg to come find me. Let me buy you a drink. Let me buy you lunch. Let me buy you and let's explore things further. Happy to continue the conversation the best we can.
Thank you very much. Wow, this is it. Look, we've got Diana who says that she feels the passion. It just radiates through her computer screen. Thank you so much for leaving a legacy here in Singapore and for sharing today. And she will also pick weed for you. So you've got another volunteer. Yeah. Gilbert, I see you say to infinity and beyond. You didn't volunteer anything else. Yeah. I know that resume was coming. We'll take in a little bit more. We'll wait a minute more if we want for everyone to just type in your appreciation. Christine Lowe says, take away grit, persevere, passion to be the best. Well wishes to you always. Wow, it looked like you've got a fan club, and I think I've got to bring you back one day. If not, we could all meet at Sentosa Golf Club. Now, people, wouldn't that be a nifty idea?
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. Have a reunion.
Yeah, it could be one of our sessions too. Yay, everyone's saying like, yeah, let's have lunch. This is, oh goodness, I've got to make this happen then. Hey, Teddy, thank you for the sharing. Andy, really appreciate this. Thanks also to Reg and Pete. Great sharing session that we had tonight. All the best. Thank you very much, Teddy, for coming in, dialing in from Indonesia. We really appreciate that. From Renita, Andy, you are a true example of authentic leadership, a rare gem. Keen to continue the conversation. That's generous of you, servant leadership at its best. Thank you to Regina and Pete for making it happen. Christine Lowe, so thank you, Mr. Peter Yo. So the guy at the background, a round of applause, the man who makes everything happen and made this webinar possible. Without him, honestly, we would not be here. So thank you very much. The time now is 9:26, ladies and gentlemen. So we'd like to say thank you very much. It was lovely having all of you. Any last so-called 30 seconds nuggets of wisdom from Mr. Andy Johnston before we let him take his time out?
It was just so much fun to be here tonight. I'm a little bit humbled and kind of bashful to hear some of the comments, but thank you.
Is that it? Thank you. All right. So ladies and gentlemen, it is, I mean, the comments are still flowing in as you read it. Michelle, thank you, Andy, for your sharing. I am inspired to be as passionate towards people, and hopefully I can inspire others at whatever level I am in. From Gilbert, thanks everyone, Andy, Reg, and Peter. So ladies and gentlemen, we'll come to the completion of this session. For those of you who made time to attend, we really hope that you picked the nugget of two. For me, I picked up living your values every single day, and that's that. And that's the only thing that will help you soldier on through all times, good times and through bad times. And I think the word be, the B's, you know, set your B's very clearly. That came out so clear. And finally, it's not about empowering, it's about, hey, don't tolerate stuff that you don't want. So don't just empower, don't tolerate stuff that you don't want. I really like that. Again, ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause. Thank you very much, Andy. You really made our evening. So everyone have a lovely evening. We want to say thank you very much, and we'll keep you posted in terms of the next community of practice. So adios, muchachos. Thank you, everyone. It's time for you to have rest. I hope no one wakes up as early as Andy at 4 a.m. tomorrow. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye. Have a lovely, lovely rest of the evening. Ta-ta. Bye-bye.